Perfect. So I changed my title a little bit. The subject will be the same, but I think really what we're moving from when we talk about end-to-end, from a software perspective, we're moving from this concrete silos to horizontal abstractions. That is the journey to end-to-end, right? As long as we're wiring things together and doing imperative programming, we're going to be in concrete silos, right? We're effectively building software like we build tables. Fixed constraints, right? Things can't change, things are brittle, things break. What we really want is horizontal abstractions, and that's a lot. Let's see, can I get to the next one? No, so how about that? Okay, great. So if you're not familiar with EnterpriseWeb, really quickly, we ran Etsy NFV POC number 1, Cloud NFV. Led 6 consecutive award-winning catalysts in the TM Forum, and most recently won a Layer 123 award for Best NFV Interoperability. And we've supported a wide range of use cases that you'll be familiar with, from IMS, EPC, Volt ECRAN, multi-cloud, multi-VIM, multi-VNFM, in Tier 1 operators. Some pretty exciting stuff. And so actually, I'll back up before I go here. This is not the official Etsy ZSM definition, so this is the Dave Duggal off-the-cuff definition. But I do want to say that I'm really pleased to be part of Etsy ZSM, and I would encourage anybody who's not a member to join. I think we're doing good work. I think it's my hope and the hopes of many others that becomes a vehicle for bringing a lot of communities together to finally crack this nut on end-to-end, lifecycle management, element management, et cetera. So my definition, it's not going to come out of Webster Dictionary or anything like that, but zero-touch automation, real-time, web-scale, autonomous operational processes in a heterogeneous multi-vendor environment, too complex and fast-moving for manual control, right? If you're touching it, it's not zero-touch, right? It just goes right without saying, right? But that's a big ask, right? That's not something that's really been done before. It hasn't really been done before by the enterprise. They certainly want to do it in IoT. They certainly want to do it going to need to do it in 5G. You certainly need to do it in a lot of these domains. But we shouldn't really pretend that this is something that's just out there. We're going to, and we're transforming something. And we also shouldn't pretend that the cloud guys have done this, because they're walled gardens, right? They force things through being homogeneous. They haven't solved all these problems. As far as I know, I can't go on Amazon through a single intent-based API and get everything I ever wanted. And that's the kind of thing that we've been discussing. So we want zero touch very specifically for a business reason, right? So we can get away from those deeply siloed, infrastructure-bound telecoms to become those agile digital service providers that that you guys want to be. And I think, I'm using the term very specifically middleware. I know it has lots of bad connotations, but it is apropos, right? What we're talking about is, when we talk about zero-touch automation, it's the soft middleware. It's the software between, right? It's the thin layer between your customer experiences and the applications and infrastructure that support them. And the way that's been historically built, that middleware, has been these big stacks. And if you have stack middleware, you get silos. Right? This is a one-to-one equivalence. And so we need to reinvent that middleware to be much more horizontal, because effectively we're steering towards a new OS. And we don't have to call it the new OS if that's not politically correct. We can just call it the new automated resource and service management platform. I'm easy. But effectively, it's a new kind of OSS, right? We're talking about a modular, distributed, event-driven platform which serves common functions across use cases, right? That means your FCAPs. It means your lifecycle management operations. You can't have those trapped down on a per VNFM basis. You're not going to get the automation gain. You're not going to even get the original promises of DevOps automation, all those things, if everything is a snowflake, right? And every operation is a custom operation inside something else. We have to lift those out of the silos so that we can enable automated resource and service management end to end. So, initial implementations of NFV sort of look like that. Right? If anybody's familiar with Rube Goldberg, right? But overly complicated, and not quite fulfilling the goal, right? And so I want to unpack that. I think when I first joined Etsy NFV and we ran Etsy NFV POC 1, people were talking about all those kind of buzzwords, right? They wanted to be catalog driven, they wanted to be composable telecoms. Some of those things we're not even talking about anymore. Where are all the marketplaces, right? What happened to our original objectives, right? So that's what everybody was aiming for, right? Service velocity, DevOps automation, business agility. It's been like a litany since I've sort of joined this area with you guys, but we sort of fell short, right? And we ended up doing siloed vendor-centric use cases, manually integrated VNFs, manually integrated services, manually integrated environments. That's not going to be a solution to anything, right? That's a hairball, right? It's expensive and time-consuming to deploy. When a recent open source deployment took 12 months, custom code and outside system integrators to do, and it was a simple, narrow use case, and it got celebrated across the media, right? Don't we have a problem? 12 months, a simple use case, custom code, right? Isn't that exactly what we weren't supposed to be doing? And that was, hailed in the media as like, hey, look, we did something, right? But don't the objectives matter? Right? So if we lose sight of the objectives and we focus on something narrow, yeah, sure, okay, we lower the bar, but let's not fool ourselves. We're not going to get to our end destination, right? Architecture matters, right? Architecture is prologue. Where you start decides where you end. If you don't have a good start, you won't end in a good place. And you can't really think that you're going to incrementalize to a good place because architecture ends up being like sedimentary layers, right? You get the bad stuff on the bottom and you got a bad house, right? So you really got to think about this. So we got to get over this islands of automation, right? And what I would argue is the application model is broken. And what do I mean by that? So everybody knows that the web made the world flat. The cloud made the world horizontal. APIs and web services make it loosely coupled. So why are we building 3-tier vertically integrated applications, right? We're rebuilding our silos in the cloud. Silos were hard to manage when they were on premise. And now we're going to try and push them into the other places. So the application, we talk about business models needing to be reinvented. That's common, right? When we talk about transformation, we talk about, hey, we need new business models. The VNF vendors need new business models. The technology vendors need new business models. The carriers need new business models. What you really need is a new application model. And whether we actually talk about it that way in Etsy ZSM or not, doesn't really matter. That's actually, from a software perspective, what we're actually doing. Right, that's what it is, right? So we have to somehow, get away from these silos. And what I submit is an architecture, and we're hoping to run a POC within Etsy ZSM and very rapidly demonstrate value and make contributions, hopefully very soon. And if you're a member, we would welcome you into the POC. The POCs are open multi-vendor collaborations, and we have several carriers interested as well. And what we're essentially talking about is demonstrating a general platform capability where the control plane, so this is a paradigm that everybody in telecom understands, separating these three layers, but it's not commonly used to depict NFV. So in the control plane, what we have is sort of the messaging and middleware functions, right? Instead of putting them, I don't know if I have a point here. Oh, I do. Instead of notice that the use cases are all dotted lines because they're not actually solid. They're abstract, intent-based services. So they're open, right? They're going to be late bound, right? Because we're going to optimize for the infrastructure. They're going to be infrastructure independent. There's going to be lots of policies driving the actual shape of those services. And what we're doing is instead of on a per use case basis doing all of that middleware stuff and creating vertical stacks, what we're saying is, no, we'll take the connectivity, the messaging, the integration, the composition, the orchestration, and we're going to manage it much like functions as a service, like Amazon Lambda, like a serverless architecture, if you're familiar with that. And we're going to dynamically deploy those services around the needs of use cases rather than statically implement them in the use case. And we're going to do the same thing with the management plane. That wasn't what I wanted to do. There we go, okay. Do the same thing with the management plane where we're actually going to take the FCAPs and abstract them out. And so, in computer science, we might call the FCAPs the non-functional concerns, right? They're things that apply across all use cases, fault management, configuration management, accounting, as well as lifecycle management, change management, because that has to be part of your architecture as well, because not only you bringing a lot of diverse, discrete elements together, they're all, your VNFs are getting updated and upgraded, your service definitions are arbitrary and the policies might change on them, your environments are changing continuously, the standards in the environment are changing, so, there's a lot of change in all axes, so we got to be prepared for change management architecturally. And then the data plane actually becomes a model, right? There's a software abstraction that says, actually, instead of looking at these things all hierarchically in a sort of a rigid architecture, why don't we actually, Klaus mentioned that, we want to have sort of customer-centric portals, right, where customers can do self-service and they could look down on the network and say, I want these are the services that are available to me at these are the functions at these prices or whatever it is, and I want to compose them into service, configure them the way I want. That's like an outside-in view, right? It's like the ability to look at, these are the objects in my palette. They have prices and SLAs or whatever else are wrapped around them, and I can compose them to my heart's content. And in that kind of way, it's much more useful to think about your objects of your domain as a catalog or a library than it is to think of them in any kind of hierarchical infrastructure, right? So whether it's application packages, controllers, the resources, the network services, in a layer of abstraction, they all could live in one layer, right? They can all live together. When they implement, of course, they have to understand the domain semantics and they have to implement themselves correctly. But does the business customer care? Are we going to go and teach every business customer the domain semantics of Etsy NFV, Tosca, Oasis Tosca, and all those things? Never, right? So we have to hide that. We have to hide that noise from them because the ultimate goal is just to give them something they can use. So, as a result of doing this, we get dynamic data-driven policy-controlled services. And again, we've proved this in a series of POCs, catalysts, and customer deployments. And the real goal of this is, again, speaking in terms that everybody uses in the industry, is we raise abstractions when we want to virtually centralize management, right? If we're decomposing all of these things, we're abstracting the functions out of the network appliances, and we want to have them flexibly deploy over infrastructure and all that good stuff, what we need to do is we have to get over the top of that, right? We need an abstraction over the top that looks down on that, so we can virtually centralize the management and enable programmable behavior across a set of use cases. We want to do that in a cloud-native way, so the architecture should be cloud-native, right? It should be event-driven, fully distributed, and I really mean truly cloud-native, right? Not the cloud-native like, yeah, I've got a terabyte worth of software and I jammed it in a container. Look at me, I'm cloud-native. Oh, and by the way, it has a whole bunch of host of dependencies and it's all wired together, and any one of them loses state and I break it. Well, you're not my microservices architecture. That's cloud washing, right? So want to be truly cloud-native means that you actually can deploy as autonomous microservices that are independently scalable for high availability, resilience, and portability, right? And you could actually make a direct equivalence between carrier grade and cloud native, right? That's worth noting, right? Carrier grade. You guys, NFV is going to have to be carrier grade. Well, what does carrier grade mean? High availability, resilience, right? All those properties. Well, that's exactly synonymous with what cloud native does, right? So we need to be cloud native. We want to be flexible and extensible and adaptable. Carolyn Chappell over there wrote a nice little white paper on that a while back. So we want to be flexible, extensible, adaptable. We need to be future forward in working with things like Metaswitch and other more modern and disaggregated VNFs. But we also have to work with more tightly integrated and less barely virtualized VNFs as well as PNFs. So we got to be backward compatible. And the net result is we get something like looks like sort of like a digital service factory, right? Where you're actually now just popping out these use cases because who cares what the use case is? You've abstracted out the functions. We don't care if the platform doesn't care if it's IoT. The platform doesn't care if it's enterprise. The platform doesn't care if it's 5G. But wouldn't it be nice if you could have fault management across the top, configuration management across the top? Wouldn't it be nice if you weren't doing manual integration into all of those use cases? So these are ideas, and we're looking to make contributions around these ideas. If we put that in an Etsy context, essentially, Etsy NFV very specifically said that the application layer was out of scope. The problem is, if you want automation, then the application layer must be in scope. So that's the good work of Etsy ZSM, is we have to tackle that. And what we really need to do is to get application in scope, is what we want is a software overlay, right? We want an abstraction over the top of all the VNF managers, the ROs, the SOs, the VNFs, the PNFs, the element managements, any possible combination, because as much as there's pressure that everybody would like this all to be homogeneous, it's not homogeneous today. And honestly, I don't think that's necessarily a realistic goal, right? That we're all going to be if everything's homogeneous, it's like the end of innovation. Don't we want innovation? 5 years ago, nobody in Etsy NFV talked about Docker. Now we not only talk about Docker, we talk about Kubernetes, right? And so Don't we have to anticipate new technologies in our environment? Don't we have to anticipate innovation everywhere? So what we really want to do is create architectures and platforms that are inherently built not for a static moment in time, but actually allow that variety and change to happen. I don't know how much time I have left, but 5? 4, I'm sorry, thank you, 4.5. So just to give you a concrete example, so in the recent Etsy NFB plug test, we applied all of these concepts very publicly in Sofia and Antipolis. So now, I think Etsy actually does a great job there, and I have no stock in Etsy. They don't pay me to endorse me. I pay for my own flights and dinners. But actually, I do enjoy working here, and I think they do a great job with those plug tests. But let's be honest, for 90% of the vendors showing there, it ain't nothing looking like a plug test there. Nothing's being plugged. We're seeing it's hard code, right? It's manual integration. It's people taking teams to do simple compositions, taking weeks, right? Lots of preparation by teams and coordination. So we had one guy with no interaction with the VNF vendors. There were 14 VNF vendors showed up, 17 VNFs. The only thing that we used was the Etsy wiki, which was links to their documentation and links to the artifacts. One guy, 24 hours, 17 VNFs onboarded. Okay. Ask Sylvia. I swear to God. Ask all, it's public who those guys are. So ask Conviva, ask all the other guys. I'm not making any claims about whether they like us or not, but they made no modifications to their VNFs. They were all onboarded to a model, right? That model itself mapped everything to the standards to the extent the standards exist. It also incorporates operator information model concepts as well, because the standards are never rich or wide enough to capture everything, right? And they were all onboarded. They were all mapped to our VNFM, but our VNFM is not a component. It's actually a service, right? So it's a generic service. They were all in that hour, so it was about an hour per VNF. Every VNF was mapped, onboarded and mapped to our VNFM service in an hour. That means we were doing already from day one, we could do operations across the top on all of them, right? And they were all super happy with that arrangement, right? Then we did multi-VNF composition. Composition was all, since it was all model and they were all objects, it was all point and click. I onboarded through an application manager. I mapped it to its dependencies and its controllers. It then shows up in a catalog. I go to the catalog as a service manager, and I point at the ones I want. It puts them into a palette. I write my policies, and I can deploy it. That process could take 15 minutes. And then it deploys, it's an autonomous service. Then we actually we went beyond the scope. We actually onboarded, we created adapters for every single one of the orchestrators there. So not only did we do orchestration directly, we actually onboarded everybody else's orchestrator too. And now we showed a highly federated environment. Well, why would that ever be useful? First of all, I think that in a large telecom, it's more than likely you're going to have more than one orchestrator. But also, hey, if you can't support more than one orchestrator, you can't do simple things like A/B testing. How nice would it be to do A/B testing? Well, right, but between open source components and commercial components. So I'm about to get the boot here. And then we did multi-NFVO, multi-orchestrator, multi-cloud, multi-VM. So I'll close on this. And we like sharing ideas. We like making contributions. And again, I hope to see all of you in Etsy ZSM. Yes.
What is the most common objection you get from operators who are not known for their willingness to deal at higher levels of abstraction?
So I have to answer that honestly. Disbelief, honestly. So we have to prove everything, right? There's no way we get away with anything without doing an eval, right? Where it's code pushed to their premises. By the way, it's a 75 megabyte. It's 5 microservices that are each about 15 megabytes. So it deploys in an hour. All it needs is a DB of your choice in Java. It's portable. So, so we have to prove everything. Nobody lets us. So the objection is that all sounds awesome, but I'm not sure I believe it yet.
We have another question.
And I can't quite see you. Oh, but we've met. How are you doing?
How you doing? Pat McCarthy from
Yes.
Huawei in Ireland. Quick question on the, you mentioned centralization. So what's your view on centralization versus the need to support the multi-domains, multi-layers?
Yeah.
Because of the different communities we serve in core, transport, etc.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's lots of debate. At some level, the abstraction doesn't care, right? Because at the point you make something a black box, it's a black box, right? And when I said centralization, I meant like virtual centralization, right? So, you know, so I think if you're going to get the full benefit of Etsy ZSM, and this is debatable, and it's being discussed inside Etsy Zero Touch Service Management, and Huawei is clearly involved in that, is whether those should be, effectively domain silos within an orchestrator that's doing a relatively simple job over the top. I think the reality is, from a computer science perspective, is that's completely suboptimal, right? Because every time you create black boxes, every time you hide things from things, right, which is, and you winnow things away, and sometimes you need to do it for purpose. And so separating concerns is always a good idea. Separating concerns is always a good idea. But you want to be, your zero-touch applications want to share state, right? If you want to optimize your deployments and customize and personalize your users' experiences, your stakeholder experience, your subscriber experiences, then you must share state efficiently. If you can't share state and telemetry efficiently, if you trap things in black boxes and say, hey, I don't really know what you do, so I can't really make an informed opinion, but I'm the over-the-top orchestrator, I'll pass you something that's par-baked, and you sort of take it the rest of the way, but I have no opinions, I have no worldview, I have no visibility, and you take it the rest of the way. So I guess I have an opinion. But the platform shouldn't be opinionated itself. The platform should let the customer make those choices. After all, it's their environments. So I think that's actually the wisdom. And then if you want to take optimization all the way, then you need to push optimization all the way down. But that might be something that people have different risk factors for and different tastes for.
Great. Please thank our speaker, Dave Duggal, and go see the EnterpriseWeb guys. Do you have a booth?
Yes, we do. Yeah,
Great.
right next door. Thank you.